Guys, welcome to another episode of Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig McFarland, and we are into part 2 of 5 of our Jurassic Week. This week we are talking, or this episode we're talking about The Lost World, Jurassic Park, the sequel to the original film that came out in 1997. And still to join me to talk about this film is talented filmmaker, my friend Matt Watterworth. Hello, sir.
Hey, I don't know about talented, but thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm
I
excited to
think you're
talk about
talented.
this one. Thank you. Yeah, I'm
So
super
everyone,
pumped about this one.
well, like everybody talks about Jurassic Park all the time, like the original one. And then now everyone talks about Jurassic World, but this definitely gets lost in the shuffle. So you're rewatching them. Do you remember the last time you had seen this before rewatching it for this series?
You know what? This may be my fourth viewing. I think I saw
Yeah.
it in theaters, then I saw it on home video, and then I saw it again when I probably rewatched them all. When Jurassic World was coming out, was starting
Yeah.
to come out, and I did go back. But I'll admit, like we were talking last episode, it was hard to remember, even keep track of who was where and which, especially between this one and the next one. Yeah, it was hard for me to keep track, but it's it's got some good moments. It's really
Yeah.
especially the first half seems to hold up pretty well. So I was rewatching it again. I was like, oh, there's a lot of redeeming qualities here. I think people talk badly about this film, and maybe for some good reason, but we'll talk about that. When did you just see it
Yeah.
last? How often do you
So
watch
I
these?
rewatch I fairly often. I did when the COVID outbreak happened, and I was doing self isolation for 2 weeks. I was watching a bunch of movies, and I decided to do one day where I actually watch all 5 of them.
Oh wow.
And it's a lot because the third film is the shortest of them at like an hour and a half, and this is the longest one of
Mm,
all 5 films.
hmm.
But they're all generally over 2 hours.
Right.
So I had rewatched it then, but I hadn't really watched it. It'd been a little bit since I'd seen this one. Uh, there's a lot happening in it, and I will say this: I want to, before even we get into it, I I don't know how people feel. I think part of the problem is that it's kind of a few different short films happening in it,
Yes. Yes.
um,
Yes.
and the biggest problem I think people have with it is this that final that final third act where it's like, okay, we're gonna just throw the T-Rex into San Diego and we're gonna kind
Yeah.
of do it like and
Now
the
you've
reason
become
for
John
that
Hammond.
is yeah. Yeah, well, and the reason for that whole third final act is because Spielberg wasn't sure if he was going to direct the third film, and he wanted to direct a dinosaur on mainland. So he was
He
a
wanted
little
to bring it.
selfish in this one.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say indulgence hurt him a lot in this film, and we can talk about why that is. But before we dive into it too much, I just wanted to mention a couple of things about that I should have mentioned last time very quickly.
Yeah.
One of them was I said this great stuff about setting up the payoff, which is a great screenwriting tool, and I love seeing it happen. We talked about Iron Man and that moment, and then I was like, and they do it in this movie, and I didn't give a good example, and I wanted to just mention that maybe the all-time best example of this is when you brought that claw up last time.
Yeah.
That was Grant foreshadowing the idea of, okay, the Raptors, you're looking at the one in front of you, and then the two come in from the sides. And of course, that happens to Muldoon, right? That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that he never talks about that. I assumed, sort of in my mind, I had created this idea that he said something like that he knows that that's how they hunt or something like that. But he never does. It's
Yeah.
all Grant who gives us that foreshadowing. And so that's the setting up the payoff, and one of the great lines, "Clever girl," which is one of the great moments of the film. So I just wanted to say that's a great example of setting up the payoff that I didn't really come up with at the time. And one other thing,
Yeah.
and this definitely plays into firstly, what's with the title of this movie? The Lost World, Jurassic
So
Park.
Yeah. So as a person who likes my movies in alphabetical order, it really bothers me because I have to put it there because it's like,
Right.
well, it makes sense, but it doesn't belong there. So the book is just called The Lost World. And they debated just calling it The Lost World for the movie. But then they thought people would get confused with the classic novel, The Lost World, which is a whole
Oh, of
different
course. Right. Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Which has been done with
So
Will
they thought
Ferrell
about
and
Yeah, yeah. So then they thought about calling it The Lost Island, and then they just
hmm.
decided to go with The Lost World, Jurassic Park.
But why
Why
not
not making it
Jurassic
Jurassic
Park: The
Park?
Lost World?
I know, I know.
It's so weird.
I
And
feel like
it creates
they're
further
setting
confusion
themselves up. Like they're
setting
setting
themselves up.
themselves up for failure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It's and again, maybe it's an indulgent choice. I don't know, but so my point being though, in another classic favorite scene that everybody seems to love is must go faster, which is another great Goldblum line.
Yeah,
But in that scene, it's Muldoon is driving that Jeep, and there's a jump cut, and I've never noticed this, and I there if you talk to filmmakers, they'll tell you there's a moment where they like started to watch films differently because they they started to think about behind the scenes and what's the word when you uh, I'm forgetting this word, but when you think about the behind the scenes and you reverse engineer a film, like how did we get to this point? How did this shot come together?
right.
Um, and it changes the way you sort of look at films, and that's not just filmmakers, but anyone who's sort of critical or analytical of films can probably crosses this threshold. Um, and so even though I'd been there before since I've seen Jurassic Park again, I never noticed this jump cut, and maybe that's why, because DVD didn't really exist. Nobody was gonna like frame by frame this moment, but when
Right.
when when Ian is sort of you know leaning further and further back, and the stick shift
Yeah.
is he's causing problems with that, and he's like, get off. There's a jump cut there, and if people don't know what a jump cut is, it's when you cut from one shot to another, but there's not a significant enough change in the elements of the frame to it creates basically a jarring experience. So they cut from the people in the front seat and the back of Malcolm to the same shot, but it's just a different sort of moment where so it's shocking to see that in any Hollywood film. That just doesn't really happen. It almost looks like a mistake, but being that I've missed it so many times, maybe they were just like, nobody's going to catch that. It's such an intense moment. And I bring that up because there are some really weird choices in this film, in The Lost World, that we'll talk about, but that are like just odd, Michael Bay sort of esque, not giving us the tools we need to tell the story. And we'll talk about the worst one, which is a flaming Jeep, but we'll get to that.
Oh, yes, yes. So we've got this movie, 1997. It opened,
97.
and it was the biggest. It came out May 1997, and it was the biggest opening weekend for a movie, financially, box office gross, until the very first Harry Potter movie came out in 2001. So
Really?
this was this was massive. Even more marketing to it. The ride had opened a year before at Universal Studios, and people were going crazy. I remember what I do remember from this, like, so I was 7 at this point when this movie came out, so I knew of Jurassic Park and I was excited about it. I remember seeing the VHS case. I don't know if you remember, this had the like that 3D graphic T-Rex, so like you would like
Yes.
move the case and his like would go like, and it was just pure
Yes.
1997 great technology of the VHS case. And like Burger King was selling Jurassic Park watches, like they were like the Happy Meal toys or whatever. So it was huge. Like this was massive, and so they got Jeff Goldblum, who he's definitely changed. Ian Malcolm, I think, has changed a lot from Jurassic Park to The Lost World.
Quite a bit.
And they set it all up, and they also, we have few small cameos from Lex and Tim, where we don't really get much character development from them, and of
Totally
course
forgot that they were in
Hammond.
this movie.
Yeah, right. Like and they just, It's so weird. They might as well have just been like extras because,
Yeah,
we see them, we talk to them, and then they get their jackets on, and then they kind of
they
just like exit
they
out of
just
this.
leave in the back of
No
the frame. Yeah,
goodbye.
it's
Yeah,
gone. Yeah,
yeah. It was
so weird.
okay.
But they have grown up
Um,
considerably, which is cool to see.
yes, yeah. And then Hammond, as Malcolm so perfectly puts it, went from capitalist to naturalist in 4 years. So it's what I do like about sequels when they're done right, with character development is seeing changes, is like to have Hammond realize that he needs to preserve and save these dinosaurs. I think it's great when he was all about the money before and he didn't really care about any of it. And then, seeing how this has affected Malcolm and how he states that he didn't take the hush money, and he's still trying to let people know what happened because it's not right. So it's very interesting. And he lost, like he's still sarcastic and he still has humor, but he doesn't have the same fun, I feel, compared to the first movie. You
Right.
think about our first introduction of him on the plane and he does his little like ha 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 like laugh.
Oh man,
That's
that
not
laugh.
not
We didn't even
there.
talk about that laugh. The most iconic laugh in
Right?
film history, perhaps.
Yeah.
There's that great
um
YouTube video, the endless laughing. I'm gonna have to play that after
yes.
this.
So what did you think of Malcolm's character, in this second film?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so. Anytime we talk about film or theater or creation of sort of story, we talked a lot about casting last time and how perfect it was and how great it was. But there's two sort of forms of casting. There's casting real actors in fake roles, or characters. What this movie did was they took a character and cast that character as the lead, as the hero, as the protagonist, and I think you were sort of getting at it there. Unfortunately, we don't know Ian Malcolm that way. Like we've already determined that he's not that guy. So they've cast this character in the wrong role. That's, I mean, not to say that Goldblum does a pretty good job. He's
Yeah.
It's not really. I don't know if he. I mean, The Fly. How many movies has he really been the guy in? Because he is a weird guy, and there are those actors that are just much better supporting players, and
Yeah.
that's just the way it is, and there are a few of them in this film actually. But yeah, it was maybe the first flaw, and I wonder, like, do you recall where people like? I guess he was sort of like the rock star of Jurassic Park. Like people loved that character, but Grant was more the
And
protagonist.
yeah, and for me, like I love Ian Malcolm, and he's a fun character. And Jeff Goldblum, again, like when I met him at the Comic Expo at the Calgary Comic Expo a couple years ago, my heart was just like, this is the greatest moment ever. But for me, it was all about Alan Grant. I know. So what's interesting is, and we didn't really talk about this. We mentioned the differences. There's a bit of a differences in the book and the movie. And what happens in the original Jurassic Park book is, BD Wong's character, Henry Wu, is a lot more prominent, and actually has a death scene.
Oh,
Hammond dies by the compies, so Hammond doesn't survive, and Malcolm also did not survive. And
oh wow.
the way the original Jurassic Park book ends, spoiler alert, we've already mentioned spoilers, they blow up the island to make sure
Oh,
nothing will happen. So
all
there's
right.
no, but everybody loved Malcolm. They really enjoyed his character, and so Michael Crichton was like, "All right, we'll just say that he survived somehow, and we'll bring him back." Because
Right.
Crichton felt that Malcolm, was this, even though he's so smart, he was this way of speaking what we're thinking and like pointing out
Right.
things and making fun of
Yes.
like the irony commentary on it. So that's why he felt to bring him. But the book is, while I'm talking about the book, it's very different. Malcolm and another character named Richard Levine. He's a paleontologist. Richard is the one who goes to the island first. as they discover on the second island, Isla Sorna, that the dinosaurs are surviving. So he goes. Then Malcolm goes with a few other people, and he doesn't have his daughter in this one. There's two little kids that are like assistants to this paleontologist that's on the island already. So they stow away, much like Malcolm's daughter did in the movie.
Okay.
And then Sarah Harding is there. She goes, and Dodgson from the first movie, you know, the guy, like, we got Dodgson here who pays Nedry to steal the embryo.
Yes, yeah.
Dodgson actually is in this movie. Him and a couple other bad guys go to steal the eggs for their company, and shit
They're
hits
still
the fan.
trying to get those embryos.
Yeah. So they have a role in the book, and there's no, you know, Hammond's nephew. There's none of that stuff. It's two smaller groups trying to, you know, do best by this. Either do best and save the dinosaurs and protect them, or have them like steal the eggs. So it's very, very different from the movie, but it's very interesting. So if you've seen the movie, I definitely recommend checking out the book because it's very different. There's no going to San Diego or anything like that.
Right. Well, let me detour you on that, because how many books are there? And were all the books published before the first movie?
So the first movie happened. The first book came out, and the first movie happened, and people were just obsessed with it and loved it. So Michael Crichton wrote the second book because it was more like Spielberg being like, hey, like, you know, I think we were gonna have a sequel on our hands.
So wait,
like, so they were friends.
So the second book came out after the first movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they did the movie, but again had no connection to it. And then he didn't write any other ones.
Okay.
People might get confused because they did release the two books together.
Yes.
And they called it Jurassic World, and this was before Jurassic World actually came out, so it has no connection to that. So there's just the two actual ones.
And then Michael Crichton passed away at some point as well, right?
Yes, so he passed away. It was quite a while ago. I want to say it was like around the time of Jurassic Park 3, which is like 2001.
Okay.
But yeah, so
Jurassic Park 3 there was no text. Yeah. There was no book to base it. Okay.
No.
Okay.
They could do whatever they wanted at that point.
Right.
So I find it interesting. Yeah, and I find it interesting when there is a book, like, you know, they always take creative liberties and they tweak some things because some things just don't translate from a book to a movie. But I find it so interesting when there's a book and it has the same title. The only thing that they basically have in common is a second island, Malcolm's in it, and Sarah Harding's in it. And like, that's about it.
Wow. Okay. I'm curious about Dodgson. I honestly, when I just rewatched it, I was like, whatever happened to him? Like, and I thought maybe you were going to tell me, like, do they come into play? Does his organization come into play ever again in the series at all?
I don't think we really heard from their name.
Okay.
I'm surprised there was no mention of it in Fallen Kingdom, with all these different, you know, companies and different, I don't know, war criminals purchasing these dinosaurs. So I wouldn't be surprised. It would make sense for them to reference the company in the sixth movie here. So
yeah. Well, and speaking of companies, was this our first time learning about InGen or hearing the name InGen, or did I miss it in the first movie?
They mention it in the first one, and like that's the one behind it. But this was really a whole new aspect of InGen.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I think like Peter Ludlow, the actor who played Peter Ludlow, Hammond's nephew, who is just a prick.
Oh yeah.
I think he was perfectly cast in this movie.
Yes.
Because I like this one especially because, you know, we're watching them in a sense. We're watching monster movies. These 5 films are monster movies, but the idea behind them is that, like, what really are the monsters? And you know, it's in this case, it's Ludlow wanting to make money off these creatures. They've survived,
Right.
so he's like,
Right.
screw it, and let's bring it to the mainland. And he's
Right.
just uh, a total prick. And most of the people on his crew are just good. Like, I mean, Roland Tempo is fantastic as
Yes.
the big hunter.
Yes.
Um, Perfect casting. I loved him in this.
Yes. Pete Postlethwaite.
Yeah. So
Um,
he was like, he's there to, just hunt, which is not great. Like he just wants to hunt and kill the T-Rex just to
right.
be like,
Right.
I'm the best.
But what I love about his character is yeah, it speaks to that theme of like who are the real monsters here, and ultimately maybe Tempo is not is like I mean certainly seems like that's his intention, but in the end he's like not interested in he's just interested in the hunt, and
There's
that
there's
was
a
interesting.
great deleted there's a great deleted scene that unfortunately has not made the light of day ever, but there's screenshots to show that it happened, and it was written in the script to show the difference between Peter Ludlow and Roland. So Roland puts the baby T-Rex to call the adult T-Rexes so he can hunt them.
Yeah,
But in the deleted scene, Peter Ludlow is seen drinking out of a whiskey bottle, as he's often seen drinking throughout the whole time. And so he's a little
yeah.
drunk. So he stumbles and trips and falls onto the baby T-Rex and breaks his leg. And that's why the baby T-Rex has a broken leg.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it's a
That is that.
great scene that they cut because for no reason, but it should have been included because it showed the difference between the two men.
That's what I was specifically wondering about that. Like, I guess we're led to believe in the final cut of the film, though, that Tempo broke that baby T Rex's leg so that it would
Yeah.
cry and call the parents over, which is not a very kind thing to do, and it would sort of cross my mind. But yeah, that's interesting that they specifically sort of solved that. Although I have no idea how that would have fit into the movie because he was not there, sort of on the hunt at the nest, but. Anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, it
I
cut for good
mean,
reason, but yeah, I think they want us to believe that he's actually not such a bad guy. He's just a hunter. Um, so let's jump back though, because you were talking about the islands a moment ago, and I think a big failing
yeah.
of this film, and I think they tried very hard, and they explained it. Like the first thing you see is Isla. What is it? Sorna.
So this one's yeah, Isla Sorna is this one. Isla
Yeah,
Nublar is the first island.
and it
And
specifically says that it's not Isla Nublar, but I don't think people know that Isla Nublar is where Jurassic Park happened. And so I think
yeah,
people just kind of gloss over it and think it's the same island, and it's certainly not.
yeah. So it's not. The idea being, so it was never mentioned in the first book or the first movie. But the idea was, and it it does unfortunately contradicts scenes we saw, as in the first movie when they see the baby raptor being hatched, when Ellie and Alan and Grant and Ian are all there. But as they've established in the second movie now, is that they actually bred all the dinosaurs and created all the dinosaurs and let them grow older on Isla Sorna, which is where this movie takes place, and then they
Right,
transported it over to Isla Nublar.
right,
Why would you want to transport dinosaurs across the ocean?
right. On an island chain known as the Cinco Verde, the five
Yes,
deaths.
yeah.
What's happening on the other three islands? I wonder. Have any of the other properties
they
like games gone into that?
No, they've never really touched on any of them,
Huh.
which is unfortunate, because I think would be very interesting to see if because Hammond even says in the first movie, he bought a chain of islands,
Right,
so he has a set that even in that first one that he owns multiple ones, and then you see the chain of island
right.
in this movie, and so it's they must. I don't know if they were just gonna have like plans where like, oh, maybe this is gonna be just like hotels on this one,
Right,
and
right. Yeah.
some herbivores, like a safari style. I don't know, but
Well, that's what I'm
it's
excited
very
about. for the future of this franchise is that maybe there's still some places to play. There could be some interesting things done with those islands still, I suppose. But yeah, I like, for example, my mom would have no idea that it's not the same island. She would just assume that it's the
Yeah.
same island, right? And so I think that's what a lot of people have done. Even though, yeah, even although, like, when Vince Vaughn gets into the main foyer of whatever the building is, and you see the mural of the old Jeeps and stuff, or the Ford Explorers.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't help. I think people are like, oh yeah, this is the same island when you see something like that. So anyway,
I mean, it looks different, the compound, but that they're at there at the end there, but it is 4 years later, so and it's dark out, so of course it would look different, and you don't
right,
really think twice that it is something different. So it's
right,
interesting choice that they chose to do it this way.
right. And I mean,
But
speaking of
speaking of Vince
challenges, oh, go ahead.
Vaughn,
Vince Vaughn.
well,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, speaking of Vince Vaughn, but this is a very early role for him, and it's
Yeah.
very different than anything he ever plays.
Yes.
It's interesting. He got this because Spielberg went to an early screening of Swingers, and because they used the Jaws music in the movie Swingers at one point, and so
Okay.
he had to watch it to say that they could give the rights,
I
and
see.
he loved Vince Vaughn and offered him this part.
I mean, and again, it's so weird how perfectly cast the last film was and how poorly cast this film was. And that's not to say that it's like bad actors, but Vince Vaughn is wrong for this role. It's just not. It's I don't know about you, what you think, but it just comes off as the wrong casting choice.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. I've like I said, I find it interesting because other than he was in what, like True Detective season 2 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
But I mean, other than that, like this character, there are Vince Vaughn elements to it, but it's very
of course,
different
yeah.
than anything else he plays, and I think it's because it's such a unique film as well, being dinosaur. Because yeah, like the scene always kind of bothered me when he was like, "Oh, I should tell you guys, like Hammond thought this might happen, so he sent a secret weapon." Like, what's that? He's
Yeah,
like, "Me," and then goes through the campsite and releases the dinosaurs.
it's so funny. But when we were chatting about recording this episode, I mentioned that when I first saw this movie in theaters, I was on a date, and maybe one of my very first
Yes.
dates, and it's so weird how when I heard that line when I was in, I don't know, like probably grade 7, grade 6 even. I think her mom was with us. Um, it was like I was like, that dude is such a badass. When I when I was a kid, I was like, that was the greatest line ever. He is the secret weapon. And now, having just rewatched it, I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't play. That doesn't work very well. But it does, maybe it does work for kids. And that's another thing that's missing comparing between these two. The access point for kids is not there. I mean, of course we have the Kelly character, but like she's not even in the. I didn't even realize she doesn't even appear on the mainland until the very last scene, the sort of denouement. She's not in any of the action, which of course makes sense. I mean, he would have
Yeah.
kept her away from there. But yeah, I mean, it was missing that sort of access point for kids. And anyway, so now I've taken us off track. But yeah, Vince Vaughn. I mean, yeah, I think he's got some good moments, but yeah, there's some cheese to him as well.
Yeah. I would say, um, I would really like to see more of and they never announced anything, and I don't think it's going to happen. But I would love to see more of Julianne Moore's character, because I feel like there should have been more to her. But we talked about last time how Laura Dern was such a early you know great like female protagonist
Yeah,
in these action movies, and Sarah Harding is a very strong independent woman. She's going to the island by herself, which that just seems stupid. I don't
for
know.
sure, for sure.
I don't think I
But don't
would do
worry,
it.
like Hammond said, she
Um,
knows how upwind and downwind works. She's fine.
so the problem though with her character is she contradicts herself a lot. Like she's
Mm,
often saying, um, like one of the examples she says is like, we're here to observe, not to get involved. So keep your distance. But she's the one who goes and touches the baby Stegosaurus. Like,
Absolutely. So
she's
weird.
so smart about predators. She's supposed to know so much about predator. She knows there's baby T-Rex blood on her jacket, and
Right,
she just
right.
lets it happen the whole
That won't
time.
dry. That won't dry. So
Yeah.
yeah. It's a bit, and I have to say I think Julianne Moore is fantastic, and maybe the character is flawed, but I don't know that she's the right choice for that role either. Interestingly enough, the one person on the team who I think is a great casting choice and did a great job was Richard Schiff as Eddie.
Yeah.
And I'm a big West Wing fan. So Richard Schiff is like, I love him. And I literally forgot he was in this movie. And I was so pumped when I saw him. And I didn't even know if he was going to die or not. And it had been long enough that I forgot, sort of these important points. And his death is so epic, like maybe one of the most epic deaths in,
Oh,
this
100%.
franchise.
I don't think anybody, the only person who's had a crazier death in all the movies, is in Jurassic World, Claire's assistant, who gets picked up
Yes,
by the
yes,
pterodons,
yeah.
and then the Mosasaurus like eats, like,
Dropped into the
she
mouth.
gets
Yeah,
it
it's
bad, but
amazing.
he gets eaten by 2 T-Rex.
And split in half. It's pretty heavy metal. Uh, yeah. So I like anytime you have a character who is all about the gear and the equipment, like Q and 007, or like I'm into that. And so and there's great banter between him about like, why isn't the satellite phone working? Well, you got to treat it right. I'll treat it right when it starts working. Well, it's not going to start working. That was working for me early on. And so actually a lot of the beginning of this film, I was like, this is great. Like, why do people speak poorly of this film? But it does come later. But one of the big, like you mentioned, the Stegosaurus, that was how did they not include that as a dinosaur in Jurassic Park? It's almost as though they saved it for this moment, which is a beautiful moment where
So
these
yeah,
really
because
great visuals.
The Stegosaurus in the book, is the sick dinosaur that they encounter.
Oh, okay.
But they changed it to Triceratops. And the reason why the Stegosaurus got such a prominent time this movie is because Spielberg got like thousands of letters from people
From kids
demanding
who
the
love that dinosaur, right?
Stegosaurus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because
I
people
bet.
love that dinosaur.
Yeah.
And it's such a great dinosaur, and it looks amazing, everything about it. So I'm glad that they didn't just throw it in, they gave it a full scene. Like, I really
Mhm.
like that. It was great. Well, we're talking about that because so they do have, like, they had one adult animatronic, and then the baby animatronic, and then the rest were CGI. What did you think of the CGI and the animatronics in this movie?
So one interesting comparison, I think, to that I'd love to make is between Aliens and Jurassic Park and the Lost World Jurassic Park. And why is Aliens such a great sequel that improves upon the first sort of groundbreaking film, and this one does not, and this one sort of fails? And I think after we spoke, I read that in Jurassic Park there are only 14 minutes of dinosaurs on screen in the entire film, and we talked about how little action really happens until the 1 hour mark. There are tons of dinosaurs on screen very early on in this film, and I get where Spielberg's coming from. It's like, I gotta up the game. I gotta we've seen them in the last one. I gotta really show them off in this one. And I don't know that that's completely true, but that's the strategy here. And what, like, you tell me, man, why is it that Stegosaurus, that baby Stegosaurus, is not as full of life as some of the previous dinosaurs we've seen? And then that whole sort of attack moment where they're protecting the baby, that just played so poorly. And I don't know if it was Julianne Moore or a stunt person maybe who was doing sort of the working with the presumably not anything there. She's got nothing to work with to dodge and dive and avoid being attacked. It just doesn't work at all. And it's our first sort of glimpse at, like, oh wait, maybe the VFX aren't where they were in the last one for some reason on this film.
Yeah,
Why is that?
I don't. So I've seen the behind the scenes footage of Spielberg directing Julianne, and sure enough, she's rolling. It is her. She's rolling around, but there's
Okay.
nothing. And they're like,
Right.
"All right, now look left, look right, and okay, go like this." Um, and I think one of the issues is for 97, it was to get more involved and to get more because in that first movie, there's like we mentioned very little scenes with the dinosaurs and the interactions and like the very physical interactions, like when Alan and the kids are running through the stampede of the Gallimimus, like they just have to they're just looking at all the
Yeah,
different
and
places,
there's so
and
many, they could be everywhere, right? There's nothing. Yeah, that's okay.
yeah, so it worked for them. And but this one, you have these just amazing actors. Like Julianne Moore is such a phenomenal actress.
Fantastic.
She's been in so many great things, but you know, they they weren't trained for this type of stuff, I think. And I think that was kind of the problem, is this was a whole new experience. And because they did film that scene of her rolling around outside, that whole stegosaurus scene actually took place in the redwood forest in California.
Oh,
um,
cool.
and so she's actually out there, and she just had nothing to work off of.
Right.
And it was too much like, we're gonna just place it in what works, and it just doesn't quite hold up for sure. And I think that's part of the problem, is the more actual interactions with the CGI dinosaurs that just doesn't hold up. And then for the animatronics, yeah, they added a lot more. It's great. Like the scene where they are all in their cages at the InGen's camp. It was cool that they actually had physical dinosaurs, but they're not doing anything. They're just kind of standing in their cages. Like, you know, you can kind of see a tail move, or
Yeah, yeah.
the the Triceratops or whatever, like blows the smoke out of his nose, which I don't understand what that's about. But yeah, because the baby Stegosaurus just doesn't work, I think. And
Yeah, and we talked about it last time, about a little bit about like the Empire Strikes Back, where we're showing or not showing or hearing and with that moment, it was like, okay, now we're gonna stay on this Stegosaurus, and you're gonna get to sort of examine every movement it makes, and unfortunately, I think maybe that's just too much time for us, and our brains can be like, okay, that's not real, that's not alive, in a way that
and
we
I,
never really
I
got the
think that
opportunity to previously.
no, I think the problem is with when they use real animatronics. That doesn't make sense. But when they use actual animatronics, um, so you have this baby Stegosaurus, and he's moving his tail and his head, but why wouldn't he run away? Like a real
Right, yeah.
animal would probably have ran away. And I think that's the problem. Like the Triceratops worked because it was sick, and so and they sedated him, so he was just like
Right,
lying
right,
there. So that made sense, and then added,
right,
and they mentioned he's sedated, but this is a fully live creature that should be moving and like not even a backing up or anything.
right.
So I think that's where the problem comes, is that
Mm.
you're like, oh, I'm riding through, and this is Pirates of the Caribbean, and these are the
Right, right.
pirates,
Yeah,
like.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then and that leads into the big sort of safari game trail chase with the the all the giant team that comes in from Ludlow, is that the
Yeah, yeah, Ludlow's team.
him and his team, and there's the shot that was in the trailers, and it's very cool, where there's somebody on a motorcycle, and they're riding under, I don't know what it is, a large, they're but
Yeah,
like it's a
the Brachiosaurus, yeah.
brachiosaurus, right, that it's big enough for the motorcycle to ride under, but even that, like, you can tell the shadow doesn't quite work properly, and it doesn't quite feel right, unfortunately. And then there's also what are the sort of he calls him Friar Tuck in
Oh,
the
yeah,
movie.
the it's like Corythosaurus or something like
Okay, okay.
that.
Well, they put those big like arms down to sort of trap him, and it's
Yeah.
again, it's like we're just getting too much time to see the seams in the CGI, and to like see what's not working, and again, I think I can't really blame Spielberg for feeling like, okay, well now I have to step the game up. It's like the second song on the mixtape. It's got to kick things up another notch.
Yeah.
But I don't think, and I thought of Aliens a lot because Aliens didn't really do that. Aliens still sort of hid the aliens. There were the tracker devices. It was not as visual right up until the end where we really saw the Queen a lot more. But this movie seems to have trouble deciding what to show and what not to show. If I can jump ahead to the death of Dieter from the what are those little guys called?
From the little compies. Yep.
Compies, yeah. That it's so weird because that scene, firstly, you talked about the length of this film. That whole sequence goes on for way too long. I don't know why. Like they jump on him and then he scares them off, and they jump on him, he scares them off. He's lost. He's calling. Like it goes on and on and on. And then when it finally comes time that they're killing him, that part is hidden. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it just didn't work for me for some reason, and it's. I think it's just part of this bigger discussion of like, how much do we show? How much do we see? Because what's scary about those compies is they're harmless until they're in a big group. And that's quite fascinating about that particular species. But it's weird that, I don't know, it was weird that it was like, oh, now you know what happens behind that log. He's dead. And there was times where you can tell that they've been like clipped on to his clothes, because they're moving their heads but not moving anything else. It was like, why show us that much? This movie's too long. You got lots of time. Like, you could cut stuff like that out. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I got us off.
It's true. And no, I think that there's a lot of this movie overall is an enjoyable film.
It is.
I like it. I do watch it, but I would say that I guess the problem is that there's a lot happening in this movie and a lot of different things, and you're not quite sure where it's gonna be, what's it supposed to be. But speaking about the whole stampede scene where they're capturing the dinosaurs, I think to add to why some of the effects don't work is because they would show the CGI dinosaur getting captured and like the things going down around it, and then it would cut and show an animatronic dinosaur. And they're just, when you put them so close together, you see there's a big difference between them.
That's
and you're
a
like,
great
oh,
point.
wait a minute.
That's a
He was
really
very
good point.
moving, and all of a sudden
There's
he's
all
just
sorts
like,
of articulation,
yeah.
and now it's just, yeah. That's a very good point. I didn't think of that. The showing it back to back like that, it's going to be jarring for the mind. And like, it's interesting that we've been talking for as long as we have now, and we really haven't talked about Kelly at all. And I think that's just indicative of her character just doesn't really have a place in this film. Like she's sort of just along for the ride. And I think we were you mentioned a little bit about sort of the feminist perspective. This film sort of erases some of the great work that was done in Jurassic Park, when it's like Vince Vaughn protecting the women, and even Eddie up in the high protecting her, and like it's always men protecting women, up until Kelly's big moment, which is a gymnastics move, which just plays really, really poorly, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's it's the Jurassic Park have these little things that they need to fit in all the films, and they always have to have a child, whether it's one or two, but they always have a child, and they always have a female. Sometimes they throw in another one. They can have two, especially if it's like an adult and then there's a younger one. And the other thing, and this is so just, and it's relevant right now, but they always have one black person. It's a standard Hollywood thing, a token black person.
Totally,
Samuel L. Jackson in the first one.
It's true.
They have this. They have Kelly in this one. In the third movie, they have one of the pilots who dies early on. So they kind of like throw a lot into this one character, and that's like kind of the reason to be there. But the whole point is like Malcolm's going to the island. He didn't want to go, but he's going to protect and save, Julianne Moore's character, Sarah Harding, and he still wants to leave regardless. So they didn't really need to throw Kelly in there because he wants to get off the island. He needs to get off this. It just, I don't know.
And it's a weak reason why she stowed away. There's that line, "Don't listen to me." It just, anyway. it's sort of too bad. But she does actually have some really great performance moments, like when, like after the sort of first visit of the T-Rexes, and Malcolm calls up and is she okay? And she's like, yeah, she's like totally in shock, and plays that
Yeah.
so beautifully well. And she, yeah, I mean, she's good at being scared. And unfortunately, I wish she had maybe had more to do, because I think this actress is more talented than just that moment. And
She's definitely very talented and can
yeah,
have
yeah,
it.
yeah. But that's sort of the moment where, after basically, I think maybe for me, the film is really building, and yes, it's not perfect, but it's really going somewhere right up until the two groups merge. And
Yeah.
we've just lost Eddie, and then it starts to go downhill for me at that point. But that trailer hanging off the cliff moment, and Eddie trying to save them while being sort of attacked by T-Rex, it's fantastic stuff. I remember being in the theater and just being on the edge of my seat as they're hanging and trying to trying to survive, but also making jokes about no onions on my burger. I thought it was just
Yeah.
fantastic.
Everything. Yeah, the whole like ordering of the food is
Yeah,
fantastic. And yeah, like just the the fear and the panic, like because at this point the dinosaurs did cause this, but they're not in danger from the dinosaurs really at this point. This is like trying to survive. And I
right.
think it's so well done. And I remember just, you talked about you're all about the characters that are about the gears. Like I
Yes, yeah,
remember these vehicles, just especially that trailer was just like the
yeah,
coolest thing ever.
totally.
And I know they released a toy of it, but of course like it was a lot of money, so we didn't get it,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
just
fair enough.
wanted it so bad because it
Of
was
course, yeah.
so cool. And so I do really like that scene. And that's actually was filmed uh at Universal Studios, like at the parkade. They like covered a part of a arcade wall, like, and
Really?
did it all there. Yeah.
Holy shit! Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. But I was gonna mention, you know, we talked about this in the first movie, is the shit hits the fan, the storm happens, and the T-Rex escapes, and that's an hour into the movie. An hour
Yeah,
into the movie. And so
yeah.
this point now, when the two teams merge, is about an hour into the movie as well. And now it's
Mm,
changed.
mm.
So I just find it interesting that it's like the hour mark is when things happen. And for Jurassic Park, it just went from things are good to shit, how are we going to survive this? How is this going to keep going? Whereas in the Lost World, um, it just becomes a trek at that hour
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
mark where you're like, all right, let's get to to call for a helicopter to come to
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
And yeah.
The some of the sort of saving grace moments are some of the incredible shots in this film, which I want to highlight a little bit. We were talking a little bit about Pete Postlewaite, who is
Yep.
a brilliant actor. He's so, and like right up until his death, he was in like big films. You'd remember him from The Town, or Inception. He's the dying father in Inception. And he's also like brilliant in The Name of the Father, which if you haven't seen, I highly recommend people checking out. But he passed away in 2011, and man, could that character make a comeback at some point. It's so too bad that he's no longer with us, because that guy's sort of like Muldoon, but like even more intense, and like a bad guy, like on the
Yeah.
sort of on the wrong side. And yeah, I mean, I why did I want to bring him up? Oh, I remember, because he's off. He's like, okay, my payment is, I don't want money. I'm gonna go hunt the buck T-Rex. I want that T-Rex. So him and his sort of assistant helper, RJ, I think his name is,
RJ. Yep.
are, yeah,
Yeah.
are up in like a hunter's tree loft type thing, where they've sort of set up the baby dinosaur. We were talking about that with the broken leg, and they're ready to attack as soon as the T-Rex shows up. Meanwhile, Vince Vaughn, the backup plan, has unlocked the cages, and all hell's breaking loose in the InGen camp. And I was talking a little bit about visual language when it comes to like when you watch a Michael Bay movie and you can't, like, things just don't make sense. Like he just recently did Six Underground on Netflix, and that movie it has no shame. Like they'll be in the middle of a car chase in an open area, and then it'll cut to there's buildings everywhere. Like it's a completely different location, and now we're flipping the car that you just saw. It just doesn't make any sense. So we were talking about the Friar Tuck dinosaurs. So there's a shot of this dinosaur. Like, okay, we've seen his power before, but we haven't seen that he has the ability to launch a flaming Jeep through the air at tempo while he's sitting waiting in that tree loft thing. That doesn't make any sense. I watched it 3 times to try to understand, like, what are they trying to tell us here? Because what happens is it hits that flaming Jeep and it goes up, but then it starts coming back down. In the movie, it's coming back down, but then they cut to it midair flying at, like, that's just insanity. Like, just cut it earlier and I would have bought it way more. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird, like, I don't even know how it made into the cut.
It's just, was it just their easy way to get like Roland's attention?
Right.
Because obviously up until that point, like they weren't going. So, I guess it was an interesting choice because it just doesn't really work. And as we witnessed the car go up and then back down, like this car clearly went a far distance up in the air, like, and then way over.
Like, even if they had just cut it a little bit earlier, just so we don't see it coming back down, that I could have bought that at least a little bit more. But why are we seeing it going down and then up in the next shot? It's madness. But that's okay. I mean, and there's a little bit more of that sort of tough CG where we're sort of, you know, creeping around the cages, and Vince Vaughn is gonna, and we're seeing them, you know, animatronic versions, and then it's CG versions running through the camp. And again, I think it's more of that, what you described, of that feeling of not really. Why do they look one way in one shot and then different in another shot? It's a bit jarring for sure.
Well, and so a couple, you know, we're now getting to the point where they've gone through the trek a bit, and so there's a couple things that they definitely kind of bothers me. One of the biggest things is, you know, well, they show the raptor in the first movie. They established that the raptors are extremely smart, and that's something they continue with the future movies.
Yes.
And so you have the raptors that hunt in the long grass and manage to kill a bunch of them.
Another beautiful shot, seeing those raptors sort of like sharks coming up against the group. Beautiful, terrifying shot.
One of the best shots, because it just looks, and the idea, you have this terror, like that for me as an audience member, I can feel that, like, oh God, especially when our main characters, the heroes, show up and they have to run through the grass, and luckily
the raptors, they're running towards raptors. What are they doing? yeah.
But then when they get down to the compound, the raptors don't seem to be as smart, and like at one point, you know, the raptor falls off the roof when Julianne Moore like makes it, and then it knocks off the other dinosaur, and then those two raptors start fighting with each other.
Yeah,
and that doesn't seem like something that raptors would have done in previous movie or in the future films.
Doesn't track for me either. And I mean, I don't want to be too hard on it because it's obviously very challenging, but you're getting at something that I really I sort of think about a lot, which is setting the rules. Any film, well, not any film, but most sort of horror sci-fi films where you're dealing with maybe supernatural, not in this case supernatural, but sort of science fiction elements. If it's not real in our world where physics are a real thing, you have to tell me what the rules are, and how does this being function? What, you know, we know the T-Rex tracks motion, right? We know that the raptors don't come straight at you. They use their friends to help attack. But yeah, you're right. Like much of what Muldoon and Grant taught us in the last film is thrown out the window about raptors in this film, unfortunately. Especially the worst offense in this whole sequence where they're at that compound finally is when Goldblum is climbing up to be up with Kelly and Sarah, and we know, like, Muldoon in the last film was like, they can jump 17 feet or something like that. It's like, this raptor jumps and about 4 feet, and would one, and there's so many moments where Goldblum was dead, like he was so dead so many times in the Jeep, like so many times.
Yeah.
Why are the raptors suddenly playing with their food when before they were like hunters who were, you know, killers
Yeah.
and wasted
No, it
no
does.
time?
It feels like the Raptors were so beloved in the first movie. Like they, Spielberg said the reason why the Rex comes back at the end and kind of saves the heroes in that first movie is because they viewed the Rex as the hero, and
Yeah.
the Raptors were very much the villains. And this is what we've set up. But the fact that we don't see these Raptors until an hour and 20-25 minutes, it's pretty late in the movie that we finally see them, and it's just like this big long scene that we see them in. It kind of felt like it could have been some other dinosaur they could have gone with.
Yeah, and,
uh,
and it's interesting how the Raptors come up again in like Fallen Kingdom, I mean they've retained their sort of like terrifying sort of elements, but yeah, I'm like, this film could have really taken that away. The amount of time they spend too with Julianne Moore's character, somehow getting through that window at the top, and then right behind her is a raptor, even though it couldn't make it up before for 5 minutes. And then she falls down, like you say, and those two raptors start attacking each other, and then she rolls and falls into another room, and then comes out a window, smashes through a window, and then sort of like gets up, and there's Kelly and Malcolm waiting for her, but there's nothing behind her. It's trees and grass behind her. It's like another one. Like, this does not track as visual language at all. But I mean, yeah, again, it might have been before the time of freeze framing, and it might have been before people, there were movies that were just like, nobody will catch that, nobody will notice that. But I watched that a few times, and I was like, this is a completely different part of the scene. Like, maybe
yeah.
they shot it even at a different time.
Yeah, it really, it didn't make it seem like she had climbed up that high enough that she had fallen down to the ground, then rolled into another building, and then fell down into another ground. Like,
yeah,
it
that was the
wasn't
weird
that
part,
high.
is like, I thought she landed on the ground, so now she's rolling down into what it must be an underground building, but then she's rolling out of that into the ground. So it was very odd. That they and I think honestly they could have saved that by just cutting it down. Like just don't have Goldblum staring face to face with a raptor 6 times. Like, why is that raptor not killing him? I can take a little bit of that, but don't, there's just too much. But
yeah, you
it's not
can't
that bad a film.
But we have to mention that probably the most made fun of scene, and probably like this is the most ridiculous, is the whole gymnastics scene.
Yes.
That's the one you can be the biggest fan on the planet, but you
Yeah.
have to admit that it's kind of ridiculous. And then Goldblum's line, like, they cut you from the team, like, afterwards. It's like,
yeah. And you know why that doesn't work, I think, as well, is because there was no setup for it other than a brief conversation. If like I'm certainly not a better filmmaker than Spielberg, and it's fun to it's always fun, and I'm always critical of people who are like, they should have done this. It's not that easy. It's not always so easy. But something that might have helped is if we had seen her performing some of the gymnastics in a non sort of life-threatening environment prior to. That might have been a bit less jarring to see her sort of turn that on. Like maybe there could have been a scene where Goldblum's telling her, look, I gotta go, and she's at a meet or something, and she just comes off the bars, and then they have that conversation. Because they didn't show us, it just still comes off as weird, even though they've mentioned it. It just doesn't play. Am I right? Like, we don't see anything like that until that moment, right?
No, you don't see anything like it. And I think what doesn't help is that you have this 12, 13-year-old girl, however old she is in this movie, who has been terrified the entire movie. Everything seems to scare her, rightfully so. Like that T-Rex, when the T-Rex sticks his head through the tent there, like, again, another scene like the raptors in the grass that like terrifies me. And the idea of being stuck in that waterfall with the T-Rex coming at you. Great scary scenes. She's terrified. And all of a sudden she goes and just starts posing and walking back and forth and gets this badass look on her face, and she's just like, yeah, this seems the
Yeah,
right time for me to do gymnastics
yeah,
on
yeah.
these rusty bars that I
And
don't know if
maybe
they can support me or not.
yeah, yeah. And maybe there were deleted scenes, or maybe there are moments where we that got cut out that we where we're sort of with her as she's trying to fight her fear and become braver. There's just nothing. And we were talking a lot about how great the exposition is in the first film. There's zero exposition or information about how Vince Vaughn's character and Goldblum's character interact. Like they almost don't even talk to each other. There is one moment where he comes into the waterfall and he sort of thanks him for protecting them, and that's like it's a brief moment. Like there's just, and there's very little even with Eddie. Like and of course when you kill Eddie off so early on, that removes that relationship anyway. At least there was like, oh, they're bickering and they're sort of, do they know each other before? I didn't even know, but they seem to have this sort of shorthand, and that's cool. And then when we get to the island, Eddie knows Sarah, and Vince Vaughn's character knows Sarah, and Nick knows Sarah. It's like, wait, do all these people know each other? But they've left us without any of that information. They've just sort of let us assume, and that's difficult.
Yeah,
And
it
what it
doesn't really
does
make
is
sense because
it makes moments like Kelly's big triumphant moment feel unearned and sort of meaningless if you don't build that exposition and build us to that point.
yeah, because it's I mean, Ian and Sarah dated or were dating, so that has that past relationship, so that's fine. We can establish that.
Well, they're calling each
But
other
Eddie is
babe and
like,
honey in this film. It's like they're still
yeah,
dating,
well,
I
and
guess.
then Eddie is the tech guy, and Nick is a camera guy. Like that's what they've established. Like he's done stuff all over, and he went to like Greenpeace. But so there's no reason why Sarah would actually know the two of them. Maybe if she
Right, right.
got like a few pieces of equipment from Eddie before she left, but they do definitely seem friendlier than meeting for an hour before she went to this island.
Right,
And yeah,
right.
it doesn't make sense.
I can buy that they've crossed paths. Maybe it's sort of a small community where it's like, okay, this guy shoots video and Greenpeace this and like maybe like, but yeah, they don't really give us any indication, and they sort of expect us to just say, oh yeah, these folks are a team and they've all worked together before. You just didn't see it. And anyway, it's yeah, but I think that's the point, is especially with Kelly, we don't get, like, it would have been super simple to just have and maybe there is one, and maybe I'm forgetting, and I apologize if that's the case, but like there's a great opportunity for Kelly and Sarah to have a couple of moments where they're like, Ian's losing his mind again, and like we've got this sort of shorthand and we're friendly, but there's just none of that stuff, and it's yeah. And yeah, I like I said, I do think I'm gonna find her name because I think she is a good performer. Vanessa Chester plays Kelly,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just, again, it's like, it's just the scenes aren't there. Like the performances are, but the characters aren't. And it's weird because Spielberg knows better than this. He really does. So I don't know. Well, is there anything about the behind the scenes of the production? Was it rushed? Was there anything?
So Spielberg has said kind of, I don't know how recent this was, but he has said that he kind of started to get disenchanted with the movie while he was working on it, and it was
Oh,
one of the
okay.
few movies where he started to feel that way.
Huh.
Um, and he was like, oh, is it just, I'm just keeping adding more big roars and everything, and so he was
Right,
kind of
right.
losing it. So I think that was the problem, is Spielberg started to realize that he was making a monster movie, and it wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
same as Jurassic Park.
Right.
And I think that's, and when as a filmmaker, like, it's so important that the director
Yeah, yeah. You got to
has
believe
that
in the
passion
film.
for,
Yeah.
whether nobody else does, you need to believe in it. And
Totally.
it's
Totally.
because you're the captain, and you're making sure that, if you believe in it, others will believe in it. So I think that's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where we started to have this problem there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I went to film school, I had a teacher who, when we would sort of watch films critically, he had a rule that I like a lot, which is you basically, every film can have 2 moments of like, okay, I don't buy that at all, but this is a movie I'm watching. But once you hit 3, it's like, okay, now you're crossing the line. Now you're overdoing it. Like, so how many of these moments am I expected to sort of sit through before I say, okay, you've taken me out of the film, or that just doesn't work, or just doesn't make sense. Especially when you've set up the rules where raptors are killers, right? Like you can't sit him in front of a raptor for 6 seconds and not and not have something happen, and not kill him. Stuff like that is just, it's, and even the T-Rexes too. I get the desire to, like, well, we had 1 last time, let's go 2 this time. But yeah, even that didn't, like the tent is a good example of like, why would the T-Rex just not munch on those? Like, we know they smell, so they've got great sense of smell. So there's no way the T-Rex didn't know that there was some lunch right there.
Yeah.
Why? And I guess occasionally they, there is a line from Tembo who says, he just fed, which actually is a great sequence after that, the back and forth about like, let's not refer to my friend as just fed, please.
Yeah.
But at least that is an indicator of like, okay, so maybe he's just curious and is not hungry. But yeah, there are just too many of those moments that are just like, yeah, like even like, again, I go like, it really feels like the Dieter character's death. Again, as a kid, I was sort of enraptured by the whole situation. Like, oh, these are not killer animals, but as a group they really are, and whoa, what a revelation. But
Yeah.
like the whole thing where he's got the headphones on and he doesn't hear him go away, but his pack is right there and he leaves without seeing the pack. There's too many moments of like, okay, oh yeah, he just didn't happen to see that, and he didn't remember that he walked by, even if he's. It's just there's too many of those in this film that it sort of, yeah, breaks the experience for me.
Well, I'm definitely a person who watches movies, and and I'll watch a movie about clone dinosaurs on an island, and I will, I'm watching a movie, so I accept it. But there'll be something kind of ridiculous that always takes me away from it, and it's something like that. Like, oh, well, why wouldn't he like make sure that his buddy's paying attention, or like that he's
Yeah, yeah,
walking away?
yeah.
And I think so. I think something that's always bothered me, and I do the research all the time, and there's lots of different theories about it. Is so now we've got the T-Rex to San Diego. What killed the crew? All right, because
Oh yeah, good point.
this is the big problem. So there's a lot of theories. Some are saying that the T-Rex got out
Yeah.
on top of the ship and ate all these people, including the person holding on to the steering wheel.
Like
Because
it
just the
somehow got
hands are there.
into the bridge of the ship without breaking it apart. Like there's the line where he's like, oh,
Yeah.
pieces of the crew are here. So something got in there and then locked himself back
And
in
then
the
somebody managed to get it back in there,
right.
and on his dying breath or whatever, press the button to close it.
Well, yeah, while
So
another one dying
there's
was like hitting the gas on the boat so that it was going as fast as possible too.
yeah, so there's been theories that originally there was talks about having some raptors had stowed away,
Right.
um,
That would make sense.
which would make sense, especially when we in this movie established that these were just like crazy killers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think this is a problem that you just kind of the first time you're watching it, you maybe not think twice about it, but then you rewatch it, even if you're not a huge movie fanatic like you and I, but you are definitely like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. How are
Yeah.
these people all dead and the T-Rex is down there? The T-Rex doesn't seem to be making any noise or doing anything until the doors start opening up.
Right. Right. Yeah, totally. And it does seem like the doors are like sort of broken as well. So there's some evidence of that. But the other thing that I mean, again, I hate to say this filmmaker should have done this, but it could have been something as simple as just a 5-second shot of a raptor sort of sneaking on board.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, I mean, again, so something I love, and this is a theme in this conversation, is like, what do we show? What don't we show? And so I think it was kind of cool to see like, oh, we're not actually going to see this carnage. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, the other weird thing though is that you know we're expected to believe that okay, Tembo shot the dinosaur um,
The
the
tranquilizers.
tranquilizer, yeah. Um, and there's a beautiful moment, a very quick scene, and if you blink, you miss it, kind of, where Tembo's sort of like chilling after he's shot the dinosaur, and you just hear like you hear this breath, this T-Rex breath. Well, you assume it's T-Rex. They're just like big, and it's
Yeah.
great, and you don't see the sleeping T-Rex, and you see Ludlow sort of like, you see it in his eyes, right? Like that's the best, when a performer or an actor can show you what you need to know on their face without seeing that T-Rex is alive and well, but tranked. There's a weird moment though where he shoots the first shot, and it stays on a wide, and you sort of don't know if he's hit the dinosaur or not, but then it does sort of
Yeah.
react sort of delayed, and then he puts another one in, and then we're left to assume. But not only are we left to assume that, okay, yeah, we got this dinosaur, but also we assume that it got onto the tanker or the boat, and we assume whatever happened on that boat as far as deaths. My thought was like, oh, maybe the baby dinosaur did it. Like the baby T-Rex is maybe big enough to sort of take on the ship, but of course we learned that the baby was not on that boat the whole time. So
No.
what
No. And
happened?
I mean, not to nitpick at everything about this movie.
Yes,
As
it's easy to do.
uh, but I mean, it just occurred to me that Vince Vaughn calls for help, and that first helicopter shows up. They get
Immediately.
into the helicopter right away, and as soon as they're like flying, and somehow there's already the cage and a bunch of all new crew
You're
and a
right. Yeah, like
helicopter there that had
50 new
got
people.
the T-Rex into a cage.
Yes, you're right. We do see that. It's in the cage. That's true. Yeah, and again, like that
So
all happened very quickly. Like there must have been a team on standby, like right next door, just waiting. Yeah, it was
yeah,
a bit fast.
on one of the other islands.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe maybe one of the other. That's a good point. One thing though that is so great about that ship moment is Ludlow's sort of like got his face like right up to the screen, and he's looking at this dot coming closer and closer, and there's great suspense being built there, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he sort of like realizes what's about to happen, and he steps out, and it's all in one shot, which is beautiful. We're in this room, this radar room or wherever, trying to reach them on the radio, and we follow him out, and we back out, and we see just mist, and he's walking out of this room, and then he kind of looks up, and through the mist comes the boat, and it's a brilliant shot, and it's very ominous and scary. And I thought it was, yeah, for the most part, maybe by today's standards I would have chopped it down a little bit, but in '97 that was probably perfectly just timed for good suspense. And I mean that's one part of that boat piece that at least works and makes some sense. But yeah, I mean I'm even sort of annoyed by the fact that Goldblum is like, he sees the button, but he still lets some dude grab the button, and then wait, last minute, and like, and that sort of begins, yeah, that sort of begins a series of like, I told you so moments for Goldblum, which are all fun, but you know, if he had acted just a little bit earlier, things may not have been as bad.
Yeah.
But we gotta see.
Fun fact. I gotta say though, the fun fact, SS Venture is the name of this boat that brought the T-Rex, and that
Okay.
is the name of the boat that brought King Kong to New York.
Ah, I see. Very clever.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice tip.
Clever girl.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote that down as one. Like, again, this movie's filled with really cool shots, and another one to mention really quickly, going back to the island, is the Tembo character sort of leading, once they start the day's walk to the communications building. There's this beautiful shot on our super long lens that is like him leading the pack, and like people sort of climbing up a hill behind him, and it's really beautiful. And there's a lot of that in this film, and unfortunately though, that is usually a bad sign. If you're complimenting a film on that sort of thing, it means maybe the story wasn't as strong. That's sort of a common critique.
I would 100% agree with you that this is like beautifully shot. The whole movie I think is fantastic with all these great shots. There's a scene, the great reveal where when they're finally climbing up the rope after the trailer falls down, and she goes and reaches her hand up, and
Yeah,
then there's a hand there to grab
there's that
her,
hand.
and then
Whose
it turns
hand?
out the whole other, castaways are all there.
Yeah.
And it was a great like way to just mesh them together over music, not have to do this kind of awkwardness. And I love it. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it's Spielberg, and everything he does in the
Hmm.
cinematography is just so well done in this movie. The music, again, I liked John Williams, because he knew it was a bunch of islands. They decided to add in a bit more bongos and drums
Mm.
into
Hmm.
it, which
Right.
I think really worked. So it's all of that. That's fantastic. It's just the little plot points, and the character development that just doesn't isn't fully there for
Yeah.
Spielberg standard, especially. I
Right.
think that
Totally.
might be the problem, is that this is a Spielberg movie, and it's
Right.
kind of, you put it higher up than you would other movies.
Right, right. I mean, when you look at Jaws, I mean that is a masterclass in building suspense, and he brings that to especially that trailer scene. Like I get like every time I see those tires, that shot of those tires slipping a little bit more every time. Like that's brilliant. Like he's a master of building suspense. Not at least not in this film a master of the action sequence or that climactic sequence. Unfortunately,
Yeah. And so then we get to San Diego, and
right,
it's, we mentioned it. He wasn't sure he was going to direct a third movie, so we kind of forced it in, because
right,
it's it's unfortunate that our first time seeing dinosaurs on the mainland went this way, because it could have been so much more. It would have been really fun.
yeah,
That's what I'm excited about this sixth Jurassic Park movie, Jurassic World Dominion, is that we're gonna see dinosaurs in interacting with humans like never before, and in
right.
cities and towns and farms. But the first execution was just thrown in there.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
guess.
Yeah, but I mean, like there's like it might be cheaper, but there are those brilliant moments of like even seeing the T Rex reflection in the pool when it's sort of moseying through the neighborhood area. It's like that's brilliant, and seeing that ball. We're in Canada, so I don't think we have 76 anywhere in Canada, but
Yeah.
that as that gas station with the ball that's obviously we don't see it get knocked down, but it just rolls past the car and Goldblum sort of watches it go by. Those gags are fantastic and super fun. But yeah, it does feel a little bit shoehorned in, and the I guess one piece of like upside is the way Ludlow dies is fantastic. I love that like
Oh, yeah.
Mama is it the male T Rex or the female T Rex? I guess the male.
They, yeah, they brought the mail. Yeah,
Yeah. So Daddy T Rex sort of like bites him on the leg, but doesn't kill him, and then lets him sort of scamper off, so the baby T Rex can sort of hunt a little bit. And
and he just watch. Yeah, he just watches it all happily.
yeah,
Like, you can kind of make out like a weird smile on the T Rex, like, oh, proud papa.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
Um.
Interesting. In those T Rexes, each of those adult T Rexes weighed 9 tons, and so
So they
sets
built
were
the whole
built
thing.
around. They built the whole things, and
Wow.
each T Rex weighed 9 tons, so 18
Unreal.
tons between the two of them. So they built the sets around the T Rex instead of moving it to
Wow.
every location.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. That's crazy. Uh, do you know if they exist now? Like if they're fully built, are
I
they
don't
still?
know. Yeah,
Do you
I
think they'd be in Universal somewhere or something?
they got to be around somewhere. I don't know if it's like
Yeah.
Stan Winston has them at his
Right.
studio,
Right.
but I mean, it would be impressive, and it would be great to see them. Like 9 tons, they're real, and that's what's great. And the T Rexes are their best animatronics. They look fantastic. They look real.
They are.
Well,
Yeah.
I
They're
mean,
fantastic.
they're 9 tons. They do look big. And I will say that one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it gave me nightmares, because I guess that's the problem, is the San Diego scene did give me nightmares with the idea that the dinosaurs could come. Um,
Right.
But when the little boy wakes up and goes to his parents and is like, there's a dinosaur outside my room, and the parents are arguing about it, and
Yeah.
sure enough, there's the T-Rex, and there's a great shot with the doghouse hanging from his mouth,
Yeah.
and then he like takes a picture and he roars, and then the parents like scream, and such
Yeah.
a great little scene. So I
But
do love
scary.
that.
I'm right there with
Oh
you. Like
yeah,
even though I'm older than you, when this movie came out, that moment was like terrifying. Like they killed the dog. Like that's super scary. But of course, for an adult, that might be a more comical moment. But that was not the case for me when I first
yeah.
watched it.
No. So when you first watched it, you went on a date.
Yes.
One of your first dates.
Yeah.
Uh, so what did you think of it then? Like, do you remember how you felt about it then versus now? Like, I'll give you a great example of a movie as a kid that you watch, and then you rewatch it, like, holy crap, this is awful. I went for my friend's birthday when I was a kid to go see Batman and Robin. And as a
Yes.
small child, I thought Batman and Robin was the coolest thing ever. I thought it was fantastic. This was great. Dr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, Bane,
Yep.
fantastic. And then you watch it older and you're like, holy crap.
What is happening here?
So there's movies like that that kids, especially something with dinosaurs or superheroes, where kids kind of view it differently as an adult. So do you remember how you felt when you first watched it, and how much of your views of it has changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, it still sort of blew me away. I sort of go back to the idea of like what I'm trying to understand more about why this movie didn't work as well, but it did work for me as a kid. It absolutely did. Like everything about it. But the problem is now I care more about the story, and now I care more about like I couldn't even, I probably couldn't have told you why Hammond sent this team. I really had to pay attention because it's all just very little dialogue, very front and center. And now, if you're on your phone or if you're not paying attention now, which a lot of us, sort of half watch film and TV now, you have no idea why they're there. And it's. But I guess, of course, that doesn't really matter in especially to the Hollywood executive, right? Like it's just about getting to the big action pieces so we can make the trailer, so we can sell the lunchbox and sell some tickets. So yeah, I mean, those things really appealed to me as a kid for sure. But yeah, like with Batman and Robin, I mean, I want to know more about the story. Like what, like Mr. Freeze has an incredible backstory. It's heartbreaking and it's been done well, and it was not done well in that film. And I
Yeah.
think the same is true here. I care more about the story. Give me the stakes, give me the reasons, and that's not as strong.
And I think Jurassic Park works so well because it is there for everybody, but it's such a, we talked about Jurassic Park, about the philosophy behind it and the theoretical and chaos theory, and it's a really smart movie wrapped around an action dinosaur movie with a bow of humor placed on top of it. Whereas this one, they took away this a lot of the smartness to it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they didn't know if they wanted to make this smart movie or if they wanted to make it this big action-packed one.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's
I
kind
mean,
of the fault from it. Yeah.
I think Jurassic Park has a few moments, especially like when when the Raptors are fighting the T-Rex right at the end. There are moments where like, oh, we're just gonna slip past you while you guys are doing this, that are like, yeah. But there's so many of them in this film. There's so many moments where it's like, I'll let that one go. That it's just it's too much for me. But yeah, what about you? Does it hold up or no?
Yeah, so when I first watched it, it was like, this is great, this is amazing. And then, yeah, I would say I kind of went to a point where I actually enjoyed it a bit more than when I did as a kid. And then I became more of a, you know, film buff and was starting to analyze it a little bit too much.
Right.
And it is just the little things that just don't fully work. But I think for the most part, people can still enjoy it and have a lot of fun with it. But there are a couple moments that, whether you have seen it dozens of time or a couple times and you really know movies or you just kind of watch these movies, there's a couple moments that people still kind of make fun of and go like, what
Right,
is this?
right.
The what happened to the crew on the boat, the
Yeah.
gymnastics scene,
That is a
you
pretty
know,
big
there's
leap that I sort of forgot about. It's crazy
yeah.
how like they don't. Yeah, there's really there are some plot holes in films. That's a pretty big one.
And so I don't know, it's I I enjoy this. I but it's a long one and
Yeah.
it's a long film. Like we mentioned,
Yeah.
it's the longest one. So I have to be with this one in particular out of all five of them. I have to really be in the right frame of mind for it.
Mm,
I need to be able to, if it's a rainy day, it's perfect, and I just like gonna sit there and watch it. But
right. Right.
yeah, I don't know. The Lost World, Jurassic Park. It's an interesting one. I think
Yeah.
I was just on IMDb earlier, and it 6.6 out of 10 for the
Oh,
audience.
it's not as bad as I thought.
So no,
um yeah,
I
I mean there's still a lot of fun to be had in this film. We're just yeah, we're sort of like they get to it with moments like, we need a rope, what else do we need? Oh yeah, three burgers, like that kind of dialogue feels like it's great and works really well in Jurassic Park, and there's just not enough of that sort of fun comedy in this film either. It's like the recipe's there, but just the different ingredients, like not enough of this and too much of that, and it was close. It was really close.
and I feel like we've actually just managed to bring it back to the beginning where we said that the character development of Ian Malcolm wasn't
Mm,
quite there. It wasn't the same. Like he
yes.
changed as he should have after experiences stuff, but he's lost his charm and his fun, and and that's just like that's what was missing,
Yeah.
except for in that scene where they're ordering the food. You just don't have that same Malcolm. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned, like you kind of wrote Malcolm into the character.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and you're right. He has changed, and yeah, I think there's a way to make it work. It just didn't quite get there because I loved how he's like, no, yeah, I am going to the island because it's a rescue mission, and that sort of is a shift in who he has been. No mention of chaos theory whatsoever, though, in this film, as far as I
No,
recall, which
no.
is which is too bad because it's a good sort of franchise wide theme that you would think might come up when your protagonist is the one who preaches that, but completely not even a throwaway. Like that could have worked really well. Some sort of like although the one thing that I do that I thought was a nice callback was, in Jurassic Park we have the cup of water and we see the ripple. We were talking about that shake of the water, and then we see the ripple in the footprints of other dinosaurs. Like now it's a big puddle of water,
Yeah.
and it wasn't too much. It was just like, oh yeah, I remember that from the last film. Something bad's about to happen. How did he know that they were coming back? Did I miss that? I know we're trying to wrap it up here, but we're in the trailer. We give the baby
Yeah.
dinosaur back to the T-Rexes. They go on their way. We're all good. And then he has a moment of pause, and he's like, "Oh, this is going to be bad." And then they
Yeah,
come
he's
back
like
and they
hang on
attack.
to something. Yeah.
How did he know?
Um
Is there an indicator I missed?
no, so there is this one flaw that Jurassic Park had too, and this one has it, uh, where you've mentioned the rules and you've set up this universe, you set that up, that these T Rexes are ground shaking and make the move,
Right.
and you're going to
Yes.
know that they're coming in. So at the end of
Yes.
Jurassic Park, the T Rex is magically in the the control center,
Yeah.
the visitor center there, and in this one, you heard them like coming, and then they give the baby T-Rex and they do go away, and then all of a sudden they're back.
They're
Like
back. Yeah. And Eddie didn't warn them, even though he had the overhead view and he saw them
no,
leaving. And like,
no.
and you're right. And this is like zombies. This bugs me in zombie films and Walking Dead all the time. Is like, yeah, zombies are so loud and you hear them coming until you need a scene where it's a surprise and it's right behind you. And how did that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rule break. But again, we know that we're watching a film. I can take a little bit of that, just don't overdo it. And yeah, it feels like I said, the recipe just got messed up a little bit on this one. But
Yeah.
overall, still super fun. And actually,
Yeah.
through the lens of today, what do you think of the film today as far as what's going on, how does it affect us now, or how does it play today? Not just does it hold up, but like, what does it say about the world? I mean, obviously we're recording this in a time where riots are happening in the US, and it's great to see in a film of this era, like, oh, there's a black character who doesn't get killed and is integral and important to the story. That's nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely there's this isn't the worst portrayal of females in movies, that's for sure. And I would say that you here was the idea being it's very interesting because it is about, and this starts what happens in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is like, oh, kind of what do these animals like? What rights do these animals have? So Hammond wants to protect this island, and then there's people who saw that it was a bad idea. They lost people. People were killed, and Peter Ludlow thinks the smart idea is to try again, but bring them to San Diego. Like,
Yeah, finish
and
that park we started.
yeah, but like with more people around, this will
Yeah.
go great.
Yeah.
So I think it's so relevant again because it's it shows it's all about that money.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes it go around, and people will
That's a
do
really good
anything
point.
to make a buck, even though it clearly shows it as a bad idea.
You're right. But actually you bring up a great point, which is that there's not any evidence. The world doesn't really know what happened at Jurassic Park, right? Like, it's a legend. Like
Yeah,
the Costa Ricans are like, oh, there's bad omens around here. It's like, but it's sort of just a legend, and nobody knows if it really happened. And that's so true of the difficulty we have right now with alternate facts and Trump and what's true and what's being obfuscated, and you're right. It's the money that if there's money involved, people are gonna do whatever it takes to protect
yeah,
their investments. So
and you have this brilliant scientist who has, I don't know how many degrees. They never really say, but Ian Malcolm is just so smart. He's clearly an intellectual man who's saying that there was an island full of dinosaurs, and they show it on the subway scene at the beginning where everyone knows who he is and they're looking at him, and the one guy's like, "I believed you." Uh, and
yeah,
so it's just so weird.
there's apparently there's a cameo from Eli Roth in the subway there somewhere, which I didn't
Oh,
catch. I saw him on IMDb, and I guess I don't know how true that is, because there's a lot of uncredited roles, like, where people have, I don't know, maybe they were like, oh, an extra in this. I was the bus driver. So a lot of uncredited stuff on the IMDb, and who knows how accurate that is sometimes.
there
But one,
there is the writer, David Cope or whatever his name is.
yeah, yeah,
He's one of the writers of this movie, and he is credited as Unlucky Bastard because he's the guy who is running past the video store and decides he can escape the crowd and go
right,
in, but
right,
he gets to the door and the T-Rex pulls him away and he gets eaten
right.
off screen behind the car there. That's one of the
That's
writers of
the
this
writer.
movie, and he's
Oh, that's funny.
credited. Yeah,
And I
he's
guess
credited as
I
Unlucky Bastard.
and I saw that Spielberg makes a cameo as well in this one. He's popcorn eating guy, but I didn't see that either.
It's taken me up until last time I rewatched it. I've known about this and I've tried to discover it every time, but I've never noticed it. But it's when at the end when they're watching the CNN news coverage of the T-Rex going back to the island.
Oh,
There's one part in the reflection because it's Ian, Kelly, and Sarah all sitting on the couch
yeah,
watching this, and of course Ian and Sarah are passed out because they've been up all night.
yeah.
Um, but you can actually see in the reflection of the television, Spielberg is sitting in between all of them on the couch.
Really? Oh, I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
find that. That's cool. One other sort of interesting bit of trivia is the little girl. We didn't even talk about the rich family, the way we kick things off on this. Again, the very first scene is the inciting incident of this film, because Hammond tells us later that attack that happened on this little girl is the reason why he's sort of lost some control and needs to get documents and send the team in. But that little
Yeah.
girl is also she's gone on to be a bit of a star. She's in a few films like Practical Magic and 10,000 BC and Push, but she's not super well known. But I thought it was interesting that she was very young. Who knows how old? She's my age. I see on her IMDb, but she's gone on to bigger and better things. Her career has blossomed. She's got a ton of credits, but anyway, nothing massive.
There is also a deleted scene, which is on the like the Blu-ray edition, where just before Malcolm gets to the mansion, and that's where he runs into Peter Ludlow, they do show all those businessmen that were coming down the stairs. They had a scene where Peter Ludlow was meeting with all of them and saying why he was taking over the company officially. And they do mention that she was attacked, but she did survive. So in a deleted scene, they do mention that she did survive the attack.
He says that in the cut I watched. He says that she's okay. Yeah,
Someone says it too. Yeah,
that's what happens when you're so into something. You start to, is this a deleted scene or not? Yeah, but we do know she's safe. She's okay, which is interesting because then it makes me think. Oh well, those again, what are they? Compies?
The compies. Yeah.
Yeah. It made me think. Okay, maybe the compies are not all that deadly, right? But which is a nice misdirect and makes Dieter's death more interesting. But again, that scene was far too long. Speaking of too long, Craig, we have talked for quite a while about this film.
We have. It's a long movie.
It is.
It makes
sense. It makes sense that this would be our longest conversation too, probably. But before we go, and if you're just listening on the podcast version, you got to come to YouTube and see Craig's shirt. Show us your shirt because you said this was homemade or made a gift from someone.
Yeah, my cousins made it for me for my birthday. 30saurus Rex.
Nice.
For my 30th birthday, because as a grown man, when you turn 30, surely someone needs to make you a Jurassic Park shirt.
I love it. So tell me, do you have shirts lined up for all 5?
Yep. I've got shirts for every single one. I'm gonna have to double up on some episodes. I might just have to do a wardrobe change, but I love these movies. I want to be Jurassic World Dominion. I want to be a part of it. I will play a tree. Like, I will do whatever you need. CGI.
You could be in the reflection of a TV eating popcorn or something.
Exactly. Yeah. As a nice homage to Spielberg.
That'd be perfect.
With that. Whatever you.
Yeah, man. Let's make it happen. Hashtag Craig finds a way.
Hashtag Craig finds a way. Jurassic World Dominion. They're going to be starting up production here soon. So, I'm available. I really am. Colin Trevorrow. Please. Bryce, Chris, Laura, Sam, and Jeff, you're all in the movie. BD Wong, come on, help a brother out.
That's right. I can't wait to see. Yeah. I can't wait to see it happen, man. It's going to be great, and I can't wait to see the other shirts. So tune in to the upcoming episodes as well. I want to see see what the other shirts are. How many could there be? But I'm sure you will answer that question.
Oh, Craig finds a way. Yeah, totally. No, there's plenty more. We've got 3 more episodes to go here. So tune in tomorrow. We've got Jurassic Park 3. It's a much shorter film, but there's lots to talk about, and it's a fun one. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it. Matt, thank you so much for being here once again today.
Thank you for having me. It's super, super fun. I'm looking forward to more. And actually, this is a guilty pleasure of mine. The third one is I'm a big fan of the whole cast. I think we're going to have a good chat.
Oh yeah, it's major guilty pleasure. I think we're going to be nicer to it than we were with this one.
Yes. Hopefully, I think this is the lowest point of the franchise, and it's not that bad.
No, it's really not. All right. Well, thank you, Matt, so much. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, guys, at PTWCraig. Check out our website, passingtimewithcraig.com, or like us on Facebook at Passing Time with Craig. Thanks so much, and we'll chat soon.